வணக்கம், இதோட பேர் பாஸ்கர். நீங்கள் இப்படி காங்கோ கிரிக்கெட் மேட்ச் பார்த்தீங்களா? இந்தியா சவுத் ஆப்பிரிக்கா. ஜாமா எனக்கு அவரோட bowling பரீட்சைக்கு இன்றைக்கு நான் ஒரு பெரிய உதவாட்டம்.
नमस्ते, मैं श्रीकाला उद्योग से गुरिंदर आपको स्वागत कर रही हूँ. आप कैसे हैं? मैं आप कालिया हज क्या सेवा कर सकती हूँ?
नमस्कार, আমি যতীন বলছি. আপনি কেমন আছেন রামাদি? আজকে কলকাতা বৃষ্টি পড়েছে কি? খুব ভালো বোতল. আপনার জন্য আমি আজকে কি করতে পারি?
And of course, what he's saying, given that, sort of central core, what is fascinating is that he has this lateral mind, and he gives wonderful case studies. And there were several things that struck me as I was reading. And in fact, let me read a couple of paragraphs or sentences for you. One of them was the notion of how that when he ate the jalebi, it transported him to a certain childhood memory. And this, of course, is very, those of you who've read Proust, Marcel Proust, who wrote a wonderful book called Recherche du temps perdu, which is In Search of Lost Time. The narrator, who's in his 30s in that book, goes somewhere to somebody's house and is served a plate of what the French call madeleine, which is a sort of cookie. And that cookie reminds the narrator also of how he was a child. So the book suddenly goes backwards to the childhood of this boy, and he remembers, and then of course the whole book from the childhood starts working. But let me tell you what he says. When you relish a jalebi in a sophisticated banquet, discomfort oozes out from two simultaneous angles. Nostalgia, which we have just spoken about, and the other is snobbery. Nostalgia brings back the forgotten, inviting aroma and taste of jalebi you may have savored on the street a long time ago. Snobbery comes into play if you are consciously cultivating yourself to mingle in that society where caviar and smoked salmon are normally served. Now, I think this idea is an important one. He uses the word snobbery. I think the word I would use is status anxiety. That all of us human beings feel a certain status anxiety. That we want to be loved, we want to walk into a room, and we want people to recognize us, to smile at us. We don't want people to look through us. In other words, we want to be somebody rather than nobody. What he's saying, I think, here is that in a good company, the CEO or the management tries to create an environment which reduces this anxiety amongst the employees. But these are little practices which are so very, very important in a company. And you see how he uses the jalebi as a way to get into something like that. Let me give one more example, and that is page 25, where he talks about, yes. Now, he came from East Bengal during the partition to the West, the way I came from West Punjab to India. And he's describing that the East Bengal immigrants, how they came into West Bengal, and it was chaos. Then he compares how other societies accept immigrants. For example, the case of France, which is where 10% now of the population is Arabs, is Muslims. And they have a huge problem with this population, even with somebody like Zinedine Zidane, you know, that poor guy who's a big hero, even he feels still feels displaced in that society. So it's essentially France and maybe the whole of Europe, you could argue, has not learned how to accept immigrants. And this is also true for Japan. The third society that he compares this to is the United States, where the displaced Jews who came for finding a home, how they fitted in and flourished, becoming great scientists. All the comedians of Hollywood were Jews. All the Hollywood studios were owned by Jews. All the great banks were owned by Jews. Now here's a society that knows how to accept immigrants. And I think the point here is that it is a celebration of diversity.